the bad, the cat.
Hello and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I am your host, Russell Glasser. This is my co-host, Jeff D.
Hi, folks.
Today is December 18th, 2005. We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's Crescent City. I still have that in my notes. At Romeo's at 1500 Barton Springs Road, west of South Lamar. That starts at 11:30 and is open to any atheist or atheist-friendly people. You don't need to be a member to come. That's every Sunday except for the third Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at the Austin History Center on 9th and Guadalupe. Those start at 12:30. There was a not lecture today. It was a meeting of some sort. So the next lecture will be a month from now, January 15th. Our other regular events include Godless Gamers every Monday at 7 o'clock at my house. See the website www.atheist-community.org for information on how to contact me and get directions, or email tv@atheist-community.org. Also, Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays, 7:30 at Antonio's Tex-Mex on the southbound feeder of I-35, just south of 183. And then we have Unholy Rollers, an atheist roller skating event every Tuesday night at Playland on McCann Drive near 183 and Burnett. You can check the website calendar for more information on regular and special events. We also have a regular internet audio show called The Nonprofits every Saturday on freethoughtradio.com. The show is hosted by this man here, Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, and also features Matt Dillahunty and myself. There was a live show yesterday. It should be up on the website shortly. The next live show will be on December 31st. That's New Year's Eve. You can find more information about the show and archives of past episodes at nonprofitsradio.com. The ACA has a board meeting on the second Sunday of every month before the regular meeting. Currently, we are meeting at Schlotsky's Deli on 218 South Lamar. All ACA members are welcome to come and sit in on board meetings, but only board members may vote. The next board meeting will be on January 8th. If you enjoy the program today and you think you would like to come and meet us, we regularly meet for dinner after the show. Currently, we're meeting at Mongolian Barbecue at 117 San Jacinto Boulevard. That's downtown. To get there, you just head a few blocks west on First Street from I-35. Mongolian Barbecue is a big Asian buffet where you pick your own meats, vegetables, noodles, and sauces, and they cook it up right in front of you. Lots of fun. As with our other events, atheists and atheist-friendly people are welcome to come join us, but of course don't proselytize. That's why we're here now. We will all be there after the show, arriving at around 6:45 today, December 18th. That's all for regular announcements. And Jeff, what are you going to talk about today?
Actually, I have some comments in your announcements.
Oh, yeah.
First, I'm wondering, are you going to be joining us on December 31st on the Nonprofits?
I'm going to try.
Are you? Okay, because that was sort of a spur-of-the-moment decision we made on the show last night about whether we were going to have one then.
I don't consider the incrementation of the year
to be hugely important.
That's a big enough deal.
I understand there may be alcohol. Because it's not
during the show.
Possibly.
Okay.
It's traditional on New Year's Eve, right? Mm-hmm. But then there will not be driving. I'm also kind of surprised you guys are still having the dinner afterwards, considering what happened to the ancient history professor in Kansas recently.
Oh, you mean...
We've never had anybody actually show up to try to beat us with a steel pipe.
Well, that was two guys against one. When we show up for dinner, there are, usually 6 or 7 guys.
Right.
And
So you're figuring superior numbers.
Yeah, well, I mean, rednecks who go around beating people up are cowards.
That's true. That's true.
Now I've just invited them all to come after me.
No, you haven't.
And I'm alone.
No, don't come.
No,
you're a cowardly redneck. Please
now
don't
I've
come.
just implicitly.
I want to talk about...
I'll have tons of people around me all the time.
I'm actually here to talk about Narnia.
Oh.
You know, they made a movie of that.
I'd heard something to that effect. It must be a little movie because I hardly noticed any marketing at all.
No, great big Hollywood Disney production, actually. And I think everybody in the audience knows what I'm talking about. I'm familiar with the Narnia books from my childhood.
As am I. I was a big fan. I read them multiple times.
I was about 12 or 13 when I read them. How about you?
I think I was younger than that, but I don't really remember. How old were you when you found out that it was all one big metaphor?
Well, here's the thing. I have two older brothers, and one of them was very much into Lord of the Rings when I was a kid, and of course, Lord of the Rings was a little too heavy for me at that age, so I wound up with the Narnia books. Can't remember exactly where I got them from. It's possible I just saw them at a bookstore and said, "Ooh, these look like fantasy novels that I can handle," or it could be that my parents got them for me, or could be even that my brother got them for me. I don't know. People who have seen me on the show before may know from stuff I've said in the past that my parents eventually turned into Methodist ministers. So it's possible I got these things for a religious reason, though if that's the case, my parents never took me aside to discuss the Christian underpinnings of the Narnia series with me, ever.
Hence leading into the state of depravity that we find you now.
That was the problem. They should have said, Aslan is God. Or Jesus.
And it was a friend of my dad's who said, "I don't like those books. You know, Aslan is Jesus." And I was like, "No, he's not."
Well, I managed to be blissfully unaware of the religious underpinnings that the author C.S. Lewis intentionally put in there until I got to the very last book of the series.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to miss at that point.
I read these books. I forget how many there are, like 7 or...
There's 7.
7? Is it 7? So I got through the first 6 books, and they're like, rollicking swords and fighting and monsters and adventures and scares and, all that kind of stuff. And it was great. And then I got to the very last book of the series where he basically...
Are you going to give a spoiler here?
He gets so heavy-handed with the religiosity that even me at that tender young age could figure it out. He did it in I guess I better not give a spoiler in case people have not read the last book.
I think it's fair to say that there are giant, creepy, alternate gods that bear a striking resemblance to something that a Hindu might...
There's that. That's not actually what got me. What got me was how he destroys Narnia. The writer does.
Yeah.
And all the characters, die, or some of them get killed outside of Narnia. And then there's this even more magical, even more special Narnia that they all go to, where I can't remember all the details, but you could look at some distant thing on the horizon and whoosh, you'd be there if you wanted to go. It's like all of the difficulty was removed, all of the challenge was removed. And I'm reading this thing and going, he's just ruined this entire thing, because what I liked was the excitement and the challenge and the dangers and the difficulties. That was what made the books interesting. And he destroys that and replaces it with this, cheap, easy copy where nothing else will ever happen again. Which, of course, is a heaven analogy.
And which actually is a problem I have with heaven.
Yeah, right. It's the exact same thing. Now, I will not say that realization of mine as a kid was instrumental in me, 10 years later, realizing I was an atheist. But it did feel like the same kind of thing. If this stuff is really true, why is he trying to slip it in, surreptitiously into this book instead of, why didn't page 1 he start talking about, the facts that prove that the religion was true?
Well, I listened to Dobson.
Yeah?
Dobson, who had on a representative of the ad committee, or actually one of the people involved with the production of the movie. There's actually 2 groups that made the movie, I think. There's Disney, and then there's a group called Walden Media or something.
Okay.
And Walden Media are the religious nuts that got involved with this.
Really?
Yeah. And so
Because the director's not a religious nut, as far as I know.
No, but they I think helped with it in some way.
Huh. I wasn't aware of that. And I don't really want to talk about the... I guess we'll have to. Go ahead and finish your thing.
Well, okay, so the Walden Media guy was talking about what's so great about these books to him is basically, it introduces the truths of Christianity, but when you hear about it in Sunday school as the stuff that really happened, like Jesus walking on water and stuff, you go, oh boy, another boring story about Jesus. Whereas if you hear it in the guise of this new exciting fantasy story, then you'll be excited, and then later your parents can tell you, remember when Aslan died for Edmund and then came back to life?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, wow, that's just like the stuff I learned in Sunday school. That's so great.
And that attitude really surprises me, because these are the same sort of people that if they meet some very liberal follower of some other religion who tries to tell them, no, really, see, underneath all of our religions are the same. There's one uber God, and all of our different particular religions' names for him are just cultural things, right? They freak out because they don't want any of that. But they're quite willing to take their own God and dress him up in a lion outfit, and that's perfectly okay. I don't understand that, but let me go on with my sort of atheist perspective review. The reason I brought up the fact that I read these books as a kid and enjoyed them up until the last one is to establish that I actually have a fondness for these books. I have read them and enjoyed them, and I was quite prepared to enjoy the movie. It is not, because I'm a nostalgic kind of guy. I have a soft spot for stuff like that. I thought it was pretty well done. I thought the high point of the movie for me was the multi-species fantasy battle at one point, where there's armies of different fantasy creatures like fighting, duking it out. Lord of the Rings gave us these giant battles that were all computer generated and solved part of that problem, but it was still mostly human beings and human-shaped orcs doing the fighting, and the big elephant kind of things, and an occasional guy flying around on a bat-winged dragon creature. But that was it, right? In Narnia, you got giants and centaurs and satyrs and nymphs and griffins and all kinds of different fantasy creatures all having a war together, and that was really well done. The acting, for kid acting, I thought, it's okay. It varied, but there were some good points and some bad points. Didn't really have any problem with the production values. The story made sense. I could follow what was going on. But of course, it also had all the same bad advice that we've all seen a million times in every fairy tale for kids or fantasy movie for kids ever. Bad advice like, you just have to believe, or you think too much, or things like that. And some of it is pretty overt. I mean, there's one of the four children is like the one who's always trying to hold them back from doing anything dangerous or exciting, and they turn on her and say, "Oh, you think too much. You're not fun anymore." But we've seen that in all kinds of other fantasy stories, and I mean that's like inherent in our culture's way of dealing with kids. We're completely comfortable telling little kids there's a tooth fairy, that there's a Santa Claus, and encouraging them to believe in those things, even while we ourselves know it's completely not true. And
it's patronizing, though. I mean, telling the kids, having the message, well, the little kid had this fantastic, imaginary thought.
I'll get to that.
And then it turned out to be real.
I agree. And you made a point before the show about how...
I'll make it again.
Yeah, make your point about fiction.
In fiction, you get you often get a lot of scenes where there's one guy who's like the hardened skeptic, and I'm kind of pointing a finger at the X-Files, which I hate.
Yeah.
You've got one person who's the hardened skeptic, and you've got the other person who's like the credulous believer who says the truth is out there, there's really a magical world in the closet, and the believer turns out to be right, and the skeptic expands their horizons, which is great in fiction. But the message being applied by the fiction is you should go with these crazy impulses. And, in real life, there's not a magic world in the closet. And the truth doesn't turn out to be aliens. It turns out to be some doofuses saw a weather balloon and they went crazy.
When you're a writer, you can just make there be a magical world in the closet or aliens flying around in the sky. Though I remember going to the X-Files movie, since you brought up X-Files and we're on the topic of movies. There's a scene where they've just been captured by the aliens. They're in the South Pole and they break up through the ice, right? And just at the moment when the skeptic has got a direct line of sight on an alien spacecraft, some piece of ice hits her in the head and she goes unconscious. It also is necessary to write for writers in situations like that. If they want to perpetuate the skeptic's skepticism, they come up with the lamest excuses for them to keep on not believing, which gives skeptics a bad name, because real skeptics don't not believe in UFOs because whenever we have a chance to see one, a hunk of ice hits us in the head or some other random event comes in to stop us just before we have that magical moment of discovery. It's because the people who do believe in UFOs cannot present the freaking evidence.
And there's something that they have called, there's a well-known fallacy called ad hoc. Where every time you fail yet again to produce any kind of proof that your claims are true, you make up a spur-of-the-moment explanation. Like, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't show you my ESP under laboratory-controlled conditions, but there was so much negative energy in the room.
Right.
And it's just the chunk of ice.
That's what people try to do in real life. But, back to the subject of fiction, it's an easy rhetorical device in fiction, right? It's the equivalent in fiction writing of in a movie where the character is moving through the darkened, creepy house with her candle, and she turns around and suddenly there's a monster there. Well, it's not that if there were really such things as monsters, they'd be suddenly there behind you all the time. It's that's a very effective, simple trick you can pull in a film in order to get a response from the audience. And the same thing goes...
make them paranoid for the rest of the movie.
And the same thing goes for this rhetorical trick of you have a character who's the only one who has the evidence of the magical thing, and nobody else will believe them, and then later on they get vindicated, and everybody that didn't believe them is told, well, you should have believed all along. But the fact is, they shouldn't have believed all along. The time to believe something is when there is sufficient evidence to establish that it's actually true. Let me give you an example from Narnia. The movie starts with a quite chilling depiction of Nazi bombers flying over London and dropping bombs on them, and the family have to flee from their house out across the scary front lawn or back lawn as the bombs are falling to get to the bomb shelter, right, in order to survive the bomb attacks. And it occurs to me, suppose the kids were at the professor's house. They've left London to be safe, right? They were shipped up to the professor's house to stay while the war goes on. And suppose one day the Nazis decided we're going to fly 50 miles farther in this time, and their planes are coming for the professor's house. And that's when the little girl, the housekeeper comes and says, "Children, we've got to leave the house and go out to the bomb shelter." And that's when little sister Lucy says, "Why, no, we don't have to leave the house and go to the bomb shelter. We can escape to the magical land of Narnia right in the closet right here." Now, the professor character's advice, "You should just believe her because she's your sister and she's never lied to you before," seems a lot less strong when the issue is more than, are you going to make your little sister cry? When the issue is, are you going to be horribly killed by bombs? Then no, you don't just believe your little sister's claim about a magical land in the closet. You go do the obvious thing you need to do to stay alive. And again, the reason that didn't happen, the reason that situation doesn't come up in the book is C.S. Lewis was trying to tell you you're supposed to always just believe your little sister when she tells you about magical supernatural things. That's the bad advice part, right? There's other bad advice in that's similar to other movies. Like, I've heard some atheists make a big deal about the Aslan resurrection in the movie, and that's so much like Jesus. But yeah, I remember Tinkerbell resurrecting too, and I've never heard people say that is necessarily a problem. Certainly C.S. Lewis meant Aslan's resurrection to be thinly disguised Christianity, but just as a film goer, seeing this thing, I go, well, yeah, that's just another kind of silly magical thing, which is cool in its context,
hell,
right?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer died
Twice.
And came back to life twice.
Twice. Do you know that a new planetoid has been found and they dubbed it Buffy?
No.
You don't know this? I'm not going to digress onto that story.
Okay.
But anyway, so as a fairy tale for kids, I don't really have a problem with it. There is bad advice in fairy tales for kids and fantasy stories for kids, but there's that same kind of bad advice in everything. I don't think that Narnia is particularly bad about that, except for one thing. When it's the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus or Tinkerbell that adults encourage little children to believe in, right? When it's those particular things that they're being given bad advice about, that's like a standard thing we do to kids in our culture, which I think is not necessarily a good idea, but people apparently get over it. Probably none of our viewers right now believe in any of those things. But with Narnia, we got a religion behind it. It's the exact same kind of bad advice. But now kids are going to be seeing this and going back to their churches where the pastors are going to say, why yes, that's right. You should believe your little sister when she says she saw Jesus in,
corn husk.
In a corn husk. Yeah, excellent catch there. Because she'll cry if you don't. Well, no, it actually matters whether these claims of Christianity really are true or not. And all this bad advice is all the bad advice that gets you to just believe without actually looking at what the evidence actually is. So, to me, it's not that what happens on the screen in Narnia is that bad. It's what happens off the screen that's so bad. One last thing. I remember a few years ago, a book publisher that had the rights to the Narnia books announced that they were going to be lining up authors to write more Narnia books, and they announced that they were going to not make a point of any religious message in those books. And of course, the religious fans of the books were upset, and it made it into the news. As far as I know, there's never been any of those books published, but I do know that Disney claimed that they were just going to present the book as written and not play up the religion message, and I think they did that. But that doesn't really matter when we have a huge cultural movement.
Was that they weren't going to play up the religious message any more than it already was.
Right, no, sure, and that's fair. I don't, that's their job is to do a good translation of the book to film. I think that's fine. But what's happening is there's this huge religious movement surrounding this film, and that's where I think the kinds of bad things that kids are taught in fairy tales are going to get perpetuated, and maybe, just maybe, kids won't be growing out of it. Maybe they're going to take this bad advice to heart, and instead of, like Tinkerbell, where they realize, oh, it was just a play or just a movie, and there really wasn't even a Tinkerbell in the first place that we were clapping for to make her come back to life. That, in the case of Aslan/Jesus, they're going to think there really is such a thing. And that, to me, as an atheist, that's the problem.
I also want to say one more word about the way movies treat skeptics. And an example of the way that this happens in the book and I haven't seen the movie yet, but in the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Edmund.
Yeah.
The character of Edmund starts out as a skeptic, making fun of Lucy. But then he actually goes to Narnia and he meets some of the characters in there. So does he come back and say, guys, I hate to say this, but it turns out that I was wrong, Narnia is a real place? No, he's angry at the fact that he was wrong, and so he comes back and lies and says, what are you talking about? I never went to Narnia. And this seems to be a good example of the way certain kinds of fiction, like this one, treat skeptics as self-inflated morons who care more about appearing to be right than about finding out what's actually true. And
everybody gets off on the feeling of being right.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. One of the things that I do find personally rewarding about being a rationalist is it's nice to be right. But there's different ways to get that sensation. One is to actually care about how reason works, about how logic works, and about how evidence works. And the other is to just decide you're going to believe that you're right no matter what and go weekly to a big building full of other people who agree with the same things that you do so that you get that reinforcement. And make it a whole lifestyle of challenging yourself to go on believing that you're right no matter what kind of evidence is presented in front of you. So there's honest ways and dishonest ways. And if you're going to adopt a dishonest way, it's not that surprising to see. It's not that surprising to see an author who encourages people to get that sensation the dishonest way. See him turn around and lampoon actual skeptics the way that he does in it.
Right, and Edmund is a perfect example of a comforting little fairy tale that Christians tell themselves about atheists, which is basically, so what if there's no evidence? Even if Jesus came right down and stood in front of you and said, look, here's the holes in my hands, and I'm a 2,000-year-old dead guy, and I'll tell you stuff that you've never known before. Even if Jesus was right there, you still wouldn't believe. And that's just wrong. If presented with good evidence that this wild belief is right, then we would change our minds.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so we've got phone lines, and we haven't even pointed out verbally that the phone number is up. If the phone number's not up, it's because you're watching a rerun right now. But if today is December 18th, then you can call.
2005.
Yes. Then you can call as soon as we clear out some of these lines. And so we're going to start with Wendy. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Wendy.
I was wondering, I've called in before. I love watching your show anyway. I love the Narnia books. The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm just wanting to understand why y'all bashing it. I mean, I know it has the Christian undertones, but as far as if you didn't know, you wouldn't really notice it.
Oh, we covered that. I covered that in my review. Maybe you missed the beginning of the show, but I read those books as a kid, and I didn't know that there was supposed to be a religious message to it. And I got through 6 of the 7 books, just enjoying them as fantasy adventure stories, and I liked them very much. And I could probably go back and still read them and enjoy them. The very last book, it gets a lot less subtle, and the author does things which I think that for people that are into the religious message probably make perfect sense. But to me, as a kid just enjoying them as adventures, ruined the whole thing.
I think I must have been younger than you, because I liked the entire series.
Even the last one.
Including the last one.
Last one made me scratch my head.
I didn't read the last one.
I
haven't read the last one.
Oh, you haven't? Well, we won't tell you anything about it.
At least. It's been, I think it's been at least 7 or 8 years since I've read them, and so I'm just now going back over them again.
Go for it. Tell us what you think after you read it with the idea in mind that, with all the religious stuff in mind.
I mean, see, I don't, see, the thing is, like, I've read people's opinions about, what other people believe as far as, like, atheists and stuff, and and some of their books. And, to me, it doesn't really... to me, it doesn't really matter. I guess I'm too much into reading just about everything.
Well, I think there is... have you ever read any, fantasy adventure novels by, for, and about atheists? I don't think there is any such thing. Not that I'm aware of.
I really don't know about that. I've read, I think, Final Fantasy? Something like that.
Isn't that some game?
Cartoon books. I don't know. They have some at Barnes and Nobles. I sit there too long. But anyway.
Yeah, but there is, I think, a fair question about how honest it is to, say, take one's personal religious beliefs and hide them secretly in popular fantasy novels in the hope of converting people to your religion. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that... I think he had... without having a deep discussion about it, it troubles me, but I can't see that it's necessarily that bad of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, people inject their philosophical beliefs in their stories all the time.
But that might be worth a discussion. But, you ask why... you seem to be surprised that we'd have any issue with it at all, and the issue for me as a little kid was I was happily reading through these books, and suddenly in the last book I found out that there had been this secret message all along that I wasn't getting, and that for me ruined the books, and it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But again, we both liked most of the Narnia books.
Yeah.
So it's not so much.
I think the movie could have been a little bit better though. That's just my
I
personal
haven't
opinion.
seen it.
I thought it was okay.
It's not so much that we're complaining about the books or the movie and the message. It's that there's this huge hype now about the religious contents of the movie, and Christians trying to actually play it up and use Narnia as an evangelizing device. That's kind of obnoxious.
Okay. I see where y'all are coming from.
Yeah.
So. Keep an open mind. Anyway.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Wendy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Next on the line.
We do try to keep an open mind, just not so open that our brains fall out.
Cliche.
I love that line. It's a great line.
I know. Okay. Steve.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Steve.
One of the things about the C.S. Lewis thing is here's a guy that's trying to, like you say, hide the some sort of religious story inside of a fiction story that he wrote, and you could and you're also talking about the hype that's about it. And to me, I don't know whether it's when somebody has to hide their story inside of another story. One, does that strengthen it or weaken it? To me, the fact that a kid can read that book and not know it, not recognize that this particular powerful story is extra powerful beyond all other fantasy stories that they ever read. It makes it more like, hey, it's another myth, like a lot of myths or a lot of stories, and to me, it's an example of the ordinariness of the story in the first place.
It could be that Narnia is actually an anti-evangelizing tool in a way, because people go along and they hear this story about Narnia, and they're like, okay, here's just another fairy tale like The Lord of the Rings. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, Aslan is Jesus. And you're like, but Aslan was a make-believe character.
Then
so
isn't the Bible just another story like Lord of the Rings? Yeah,
exactly.
And it's very mysterious to me because, again, this book is the Christians who embrace this as a fine big message from their religion are saying to kids, it's okay to think of Jesus as not this kindly bearded man in ancient Israel, but rather as this big, powerful lion in the magical land of Narnia. And it's okay to think of Jesus as, it's okay whether you think of Jesus either of those two ways. How come it's not okay to think of Jesus as, the god Horus in ancient Egypt, or as the god Dionysus or Apollo or whatever in some other religion? It seems to me that is a step along the path of very liberal kind of universal theism where all religions are ultimately the same. It's just a different front put on them.
Right.
But maybe that doesn't mean that to him. I don't know. I just find it very strange.
Well, also, the people that wrote it will tell you that it is not true. You know, I mean, here you've got, go ahead and believe this thing. And by the way, when you're all done, it's just make-believe and it's not true. This other one, just like it.
Right.
That's the one you're supposed to believe. Well, I've now practiced the experience of dismissing something just like that as not true.
Right.
I think it could very well be a counter-evangelical tool just as much as an evangelical tool.
Right. It's like, sure, because Christians will say, well, the proof that Jesus rose from the dead is that people saw him afterward. What does that prove, that Aslan rose from the dead?
Yeah, people saw Aslan rose.
But they didn't. He's a fictional character. It was just written and described that way.
Yeah,
so
this is the second greatest story ever told, apparently.
I really don't understand it. I don't understand how Christians can, on the one hand, claim that it's so hugely important that the things in the Bible happened really the way that they're written there, and then be completely okay with this totally fictionalized fantasy retelling of the basic concepts of their religion. I don't see how that works, but
I don't either.
Maybe we'll have a Christian call and explain it to us.
Yep. Okay, thanks, bye.
Thank you.
By the way, I wanted to mention that in addition to the Narnia books, I think a fair topic for today would be the War on Christmas, because that just provides endless
if you would like to make a call,
because that's more fiction, this War on Christmas nonsense.
Yes. Should I go ahead and read one particular story before I go on to
okay,
next character?
That was Steve, right?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
I'm kind of...
You're already it out?
No, I'm not. Well, the next caller doesn't want to talk about Narnia, apparently. But
okay, good.
Quick story. Several outlets, including Bill O'Reilly and Focus on the Family... All I have to do is say the guy's name, and you crack up.
He's hilarious.
Yes, he is. Bill O'Reilly, on December 9th, took to the airwaves to share the latest War on Christmas outrage. In Dodgeville, Wisconsin, the Ridgewood Elementary School has changed the song Silent Night to Cold in the Night and forced the kids to sing the lyrics, Cold in the Night, no one in sight, winter winds whirl and bite, to the tune of the original Silent Night. People are outraged. We sent a demand letter asking them to immediately...
That's not him.
What?
Dude, you skipped the...
Oops.
That next quote is from this legal group that's going to sue over it. It's not him speaking.
Okay.
So don't do his voice. Do some other voice.
People are outraged. We sent a demand letter asking them to immediately change the song and allow the actual lyrics of Silent Night. And if they do not, if they insist on this ridiculous course of action, we'll file a federal lawsuit.
That's Matthew Staver of the Liberty Council.
Okay. As it turns out, and I lived through some very nasty flame wars about this, because we're always getting accused this time of year of forcing things like this to happen so that kids and their sensitive little ears don't hear about Jesus. The entire story is a fraud. Ridgewood Elementary didn't change the lyrics to Silent Night. What they did was perform a 1988 copyrighted play called The Little Tree's Christmas Gift, a play that has been performed in churches throughout the country in the past. You know, this is like a nearly 20-year-old play that has religious songs, that has Christmas songs in it, but it just happens to be about a Christmas tree. A Christmas tree that is too scraggly, it will never sell. And so the character who plays the Christmas tree, I guess, sings these lyrics because it's about him.
Right.
But it wouldn't make any sense at that point in the plot for him to start singing Silent Night, Holy Night.
Right.
Because it doesn't fit the story.
And it is not a play all full of Christmas songs with all their lyrics changed. many Christmas songs are preserved intact in their entirety in the very same play,
including the
but
ending,
that one particular
where there's
song,
a sing-along of "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." Christmas. The word Christmas.
Oh my gosh! Well, we covered this on our audio show last night, but and I'll repeat my opinion there. Folks, this is not about there being any actual war on Christmas. This is all about certain parties who are interested in collecting donations in order to fight against a war on Christmas. That's what this is about. These guys are going to go to this little grade school in Wisconsin with a lawsuit, and they're going to go to court, and they're going to lose, and it's transparently obvious that they're going to lose.
They're
but
not
you know what
going
else?
to go anymore, I bet you.
But you know what else they're going to do? I think they're going to go, Russell.
You think?
But you know what else they're going to do? They're going to pocket a hefty fee from people donating money to send them there to have a lawsuit against the school.
Here's why
That's
I think
what
they
it's
won't
all
go.
about. It is
No,
not.
here's why
it's
I
a
think
scam.
they won't go.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more effective to take people's money and then realize, oh, we made a mistake, but we'll use your money for the next cause? Then they get to keep more of the money.
Yeah, but they can only do that a few times before people people dumb enough to give them money for this will catch on.
As long as they have an actual lawsuit every once in a while, like,
That's
I don't
right.
know, Dover.
Which is, by the way, exactly what intelligent design is about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what prayer in school lawsuits are about. That's exactly what Ten Commandments monument defenses are all about.
Right. Okay, we've left John on hold long enough.
Okay, let's give him a chance.
John.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Sorry to disappoint you, not engaged in the fantasy movie things, but
Okay.
I just don't like movies at all. I do like documentary films and public access shows. So anyway, I've got a couple of teensy-weensy questions. One of them is this: do you believe that there's truth in everything? Do you believe there's ultimate truth in everything?
No.
No.
And give me an example of what?
2 + 2 is 5. No truth in that.
No, there's truth that doesn't exist. That's not right. The truth is that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5.
Oh, okay. You're not asking if everything contains an element of being correct. You're asking if there's actually a right answer to everything.
Yes.
I think there probably is. That's not to say that we necessarily know what that correct answer is.
Right,
Okay.
and then you get into weirdness about chaos theory and stuff.
But you know, I could also just say some nonsense words, and there probably wouldn't be anything you could say about that other than that they are nonsense words. If that's all you mean, then sure.
No, but your question is, given any question of fact, is there a right answer?
Yes.
And the answer is, from our perspective, is probably yes.
Okay.
Now, if you're going to talk about moral issues, that's kind of more complicated.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough.
All right.
And then the second question is, if you find out that the truth that God is the Creator and Jesus is His Son, would you accept Him?
Yeah, we already said we would.
We said that earlier.
Wait a minute.
Given sufficient evidence.
I want a clarification of your question, though. You said, would we accept him?
Yes.
And we jumped in and said, yes. What we thought you were going to ask was, would we accept that he existed? Because that's really a different question.
No.
The way that the Christian God is characterized within the claims of, like, the Bible and Christians and stuff, strikes many of us atheists as a thing not worth worshiping, even if it did exist.
Okay.
So that's really a separate question. You know, A, would we be willing to agree that such a thing existed if we got the evidence? Sure. But B, would we then line up and worship them? Not necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, there's many things that I've read that it does get to that point. It gets to that point where, you know, we are ultimately and it's the only evidence that's going to be clear is when we get to that next life, we die and we
which is awfully convenient for the people making the claim now. Well, because right now you're, I'm willing to assume that you believe in this hell that we could go to.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it's
So, but you also said that there's no evidence and you won't know till later. So, you can't exactly sit there and say that we're going to wind up there since you don't know any better than we do.
No, but it's going to be your choice. I believe that it's going to be a choice to say, yes, I do believe in Jesus. I see that I am wrong. I see that you've created.
Oh, you think we're going to have another chance after we're dead?
Pardon me?
You think we're going to have another chance after we're dead?
Pardon me?
You think we're going to have another chance after we're dead?
Yeah, I believe that we're
presented with the evidence right there and make the decision right there?
Yeah, I believe that we're in a perpetual state of perfection, and this is a, for whatever reason, the master plan. We are going to die. We are going to.
Well, that's not a Christian. That's not a view that a lot of Christians hold. Actually,
I'm an Orthodox Christian for sure.
Okay. Well, there are as many versions of Christianity as there are adherents, I'm convinced.
But from what I understand is from what I've read, is when people get to the next state as a spiritual state, that they cannot stand. Either they accept the truth or they are repulsed by it, and it appears as though they're cast into hell, but they actually cast themselves.
Excuse me, caller. You say from what you've read.
Yes.
But a minute ago you were telling us we wouldn't know until after we're dead.
Exactly. So, well, you're not going to know the truth.
What is this stuff that you've read, and why do you pay any attention to it at all, since it's all written by people who aren't dead yet?
Well, there is a person that's dead yet. His name is, and I talked to you before, this is Emanuel Swedenborg. And Emanuel Swedenborg died in 1745, and he claims, and he's got hundreds of books out, that he was privy to go to heaven and also hell.
Wait. And there's undeniable evidence this guy died and came back to life?
Swedenborg?
Yeah.
No, he didn't die. He was he was taken. He was taken in our realm now. He was taken to the heavenly.
Okay, dude. Sure. Wait, and there's a magical land called Narnia inside the wardrobe.
I don't know about Narnia.
Sorry, dude. Well, you're going to have to do. You need to do better than. Well, he claims he was taken. So what?
Well,
so what?
Got books out.
Actually, you know what? I've also recently been privy to the secrets of the universe, and I just found out there is no heaven.
Well, I don't believe that. And
why would you believe this?
Ultimate discernment,
Why would you believe the Swedenborg guy? Why?
Because of his writings were very, very. Nobody would have that perspective that he would have unless he had gone there. And he talks about, and he was a scientist, by the way. He was a famous science guy, and he's had a lot of credible things to his
except for the part about dying. Except for the part about seeing the afterlife.
Okay, dude. I mean, this gets back to what I was saying about the Narnia movie earlier. It does. I mean, there are good ways, sensible ways to decide what to believe, and then there are not so sensible ways to decide what to believe. And it doesn't sound like you're using sensible standards for deciding what's worth belief.
He's very sensible. In fact,
it's okay, dude.
I'm gonna have to cut you off to the next.
We're gonna cut you off, sir. Right? Goodbye. It is our show, after all. I mean,
you can't fire me. I quit.
On no level is, he. How on earth do you get from he said so to it's true? I mean, okay, so you liked the stuff he wrote. Big freaking deal. I like Lord of the Rings, but I don't think there's orcs. It's just, that's nonsensical. The reason to believe a thing is because there is actual evidence that the thing is true, not just because you really like the way it sounds. It's freaking ridiculous. Oh, well. Can we move on?
Well, yeah, next call.
You want to do another news? Oh, you don't have any more news?
No, well, I do, but I don't really want to take up too much time since we have full lines.
All right.
But I would like to interject the announcement once again, as I do in the middle and end of every show, that after the show ends at 6 o'clock, 45 minutes from then, you can meet us, most of us, for dinner afterwards at Mongolian Barbecue, 117 San Jacinto Boulevard, downtown. Just check some online maps or something, or check the website, atheist-community.org, And we'll be there at around 6:45 or maybe a little earlier, and you can come hang out with us if you're an atheist or an atheist-friendly person. Okay, now we're going to move on. Oh, wait, I'm getting a message from earlier. Matt Dillahunty.
Do you understand the context of this?
I think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Matt Dillahunty is at home today on the internet and fact-checking for us.
Yeah.
And he says, Aslan didn't sacrifice himself because he did it just to trick the witch. And he... Wait a minute.
Yeah, right.
I got it.
It wasn't a sacrifice. He's pointing out that that the Narnia version of Christianity points to ultimately the same flaw in Christian mythology,
right?
Where Aslan didn't really sacrifice himself because Aslan knew he was coming back. Aslan endured a few minutes of extreme pain, and that's it. Right? Again, then he knew he was going to come back to life because he knew about these special rules. And same thing with Jesus. Jesus didn't actually sacrifice himself because he knew he was coming back. The difference is, of course, Jesus has his moment of doubt, which makes his story somewhat more poignant than Aslan. He's going, oh crap, what if I'm wrong?
Well, Aslan is walking around play acting like, oh, I'm so sad.
What if God has just dumped me and he's not really going to bring me back? That's somewhat more compelling, emotionally speaking.
Yeah, it's more of a risk.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi, Bill.
Pretty good. I'm a big fan of the show.
Your note here says you're a first-time viewer. Which is it?
This is the first time I've seen it today.
Oh.
Okay. What's your point?
I'm a big fan of y'all show and everything. I watch it all the time. Do y'all like meet up? It's not like Trudy's or Chili's or wherever y'all are meeting, but y'all have like groups and stuff that get together and meet about just different like atheist activities we can participate in?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. To go over the atheist announcements real quick, once again, we meet at Romeo's Crescent City Beignets at 11:30 on Sundays. Godless Gamers on Monday nights at 7 o'clock. Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays at 7:30 at Antonio's Tex-Mex, and Unholy Rollers every Tuesday night at Playland on McCann Drive.
That's roller skating.
Yes.
Also, I should mention. I said I think I earlier made a somewhat disparaging remark about without claiming that I was talking about Christianity, but I was, where I talked about. It's not a terribly honest way to decide what to believe to just decide and then hang out with people that agree with you. Of course, atheists also do hang out with people that agree with us, and we have regular meetings. Our meetings are not church services, they are merely social gatherings, and as rationalists, we know better than to think we're right because there are others who agree with us. We hang out with other people that agree with us because it's comfortable, not because it proves we're right. In case that's where the caller was going.
Right. We obviously enjoy sitting here on TV in front of you and debating, everything. But that doesn't mean we like doing it all the time. Sometimes just going and hanging out with a bunch of atheists who agree with us is fun.
Yep.
Okay. Next caller is Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm fine.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, I was going to ask y'all if y'all believe in free will.
It depends what you mean. What do you mean by free will?
Do you believe that it's a materialistic world and you're fated to do whatever you do, or do you believe you can actually change things in your life?
I believe both those things. I recommend a book by Daniel Dennett. He is a philosopher and has written a series of books on the question of free will, examining the idea that in a materialistic world you couldn't have anything that you could call free will, and he thinks you can, and I find his arguments very compelling.
And he probably explains them better, does a better job explaining them than we will in the next couple of minutes if we try.
Okay, could you give me Daniel who?
Dennett, Dennett.
Dennett.
Yeah, if you can find, there's two books that I know of where he talks about this. The first one is this little smaller book that was actually a collection of his lectures at like Oxford or something in Britain that is called, oh crumbs, I'm not going to be able to think of the name now.
Sorry,
what's the first the smaller Daniel Dennett Silver little
Isn't
book?
It like Brain...
heck. Yeah, I guess you'll have to look him up online.
I don't know. Actually, I recommend a book called The Mind's Eye, and that's the letter I, not the word I.
Is that Dennett?
Dennett is the editor. He's one of two editors. The other is Douglas Hofstadter, and it's actually a collection of essays by a bunch of different philosophers about the nature of ourselves and how we perceive them, and I think it goes into that free will stuff a lot.
Okay.
And just to elucidate my position, I actually believe that minds are made of material stuff, and as such, they're like really fantastically complex computers. But I also believe that computers could, in principle, have free will too. I don't think they do now, obviously, but I don't rule that out.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate your help.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Oh boy, I'm kicking myself now for not remembering the name of that book. I've remembered the subtitle. The subtitle is Varieties of Free Will Worth Wanting. And it's a cool little book because he goes through a series of arguments against free will that are things like, in a materialistic world, it would be like you're locked in a room. Or it would be like you're a train on rails, and a bunch of other things. And he exposes how those arguments against free will, where they claim that material reality would constrain you in a way that amounts to not having any choices, really don't make any sense. That they're like trumped up excuses not to accept materialism used, but they're like emotional arguments used to just scare people off from the idea that we could have a materialistic universe and still be responsible for our actions. Darn, can't remember what the main title is though. But I know you can find it on the internet, various places, at least used copies.
One of the things I think people worry about with regards to free will is that we'll basically live in a society where it's like, oh, well, you're a murderer, but it was your genetics and your upbringing, and you can't help being a murderer. So we'll just say, we'll let murderers go free. And that, of course, is not true. We are perfectly capable of saying, this guy is a murderer, and yeah, he was strongly influenced by his genetics and his upbringing, but we're still going to put him in jail.
Yeah, in fact, we happen to know he's a murderer now.
Because even if it is completely deterministic that he's a murderer, we could also affect the deterministic outcome of future situations by affecting, by setting a precedent of putting murderers in jail.
Right. When we find out that some brand, model of automobile has faulty brakes, we don't just throw up our hands and say, it's a materialistic universe and those cars are just going to have bad brakes.
Right.
Just have to live with it. No, what we do is we then have some knowledge that we can act on to deal with the problem. It's, we don't just brush it off because of materialism. That's ridiculous. And that's one of the... Elbow Room, thank you, Control Room.
Thanks.
The book I've been trying to remember the name of is Elbow Room, and the other book, which is larger and which I didn't like as well, but that's because I read Elbow Room first, which I thought was a shorter and more concise presentation of his argument. The other book is called Freedom Evolves.
Do you currently have Elbow Room, and can I borrow it?
I do indeed have Elbow Room.
Okay, because I've been meaning to read.
I had to do that, because I have no free will.
Yes, I set up the straight line for the joke.
The chain of physical events from the beginning of the universe till now, it resulted in me doing this.
And in case you're listening to the audio version later,
I'm elbowing Russell,
yes.
kinda. Phew, that's right. I forgot there's the audio version.
Yeah, visual comedy doesn't work well in an all audio format. Okay, so we've got Bill back again. Yes?
Hey, I wasn't really done having the conversation earlier. I was going to ask, I know I celebrate Christmas, I was wondering if y'all also celebrate Christmas, because it is kind of a holy holiday.
I find it to be pleasant to have an annual festival of, like, exchanging gifts, even though I don't believe in any of the religious reasons why that annual holiday started. Does that answer your question?
I'm not into the whole Christmas thing because I actually came from a Jewish background, but my wife is into it, and so therefore I celebrate it.
Fucking hook-nosed dirty Jew, get off.
Guys, I hung up on him the first time for a reason.
Okay. And?
Daniel?
Yeah, how are y'all doing today?
Fine.
I wanted to talk about what y'all thought about Christianity, which is my religion, and some of the scientific evidence that says that, like, they found that the Noah's Ark and they had evidence.
You know, there's a guy. Have you ever seen a documentary where they presented, like, pieces of the wood from Noah's Ark?
I didn't know that they had one.
Well, there was one made back, I think, in the 80s. I'm not quite sure of the year. And the guy who faked that piece of wood by taking a railroad tie into his kitchen and soaking it in various herbs and spices, including teriyaki sauce, won an award at a skeptics conference for his contribution to exposing just how really silly some of these claims are. Because the people that produced the documentary didn't even lift a finger to try to verify that this artifact was real. He went and told them he had been in the Middle East. They just accepted it, took the thing, put it on TV.
So this is
my advice is be extraordinary. Pardon me?
This is the same guy that was the scientist that discovered it, or there was only one person?
There was no scientist who discovered it. It's a guy, I forget what his background was, but he's a guy who found out there was a documentary being made about Noah's Ark being real. He contacted them, claimed to have a piece, and they put his contribution, his little faked up piece of wood, on their documentary as if it was real without bothering to check whether it was real or not.
And that was a huge deal for a long time before he exposed the fact that it was a hoax. I mean, Christians would bring it up all the time.
Of course, that doesn't prove there was no Noah's Ark, right? It just proves that that this guy faked a thing. But what it also proves is that people who put together documentaries and claims of proof of various things that mean a lot to them religiously, like Noah's Ark, are not necessarily going to be real cautious about checking their facts. So you might want to be extraordinarily skeptical when somebody comes to you and says this has been scientifically proved.
Okay. Well, I had one more question. You know the whole Adam and Eve story?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I recently removed one of my ribs, and it turned into a woman.
Well, I hope you guys will be happy together.
Yeah, she's quite.
And just in time for Christmas. You don't have any spare ribs, do you? You could have a whole harem.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Nice talking to you.
All right, so that's one of those. Whew, we better have some more news.
Luckily, I do, as a matter of fact.
Good.
But this is the last piece, so I need some more names on my screen.
Well, I have my backup news story in case we...
Okay.
Can we have the phone number back up again, please?
Yes. So, some megachurches are closing for Christmas. This Christmas, no prayers will be said in several megachurches around the country. Even though the holiday falls this year on a Sunday, when churches normally host thousands for worship, pastors are canceling services, anticipating low attendance on what they call a family day. Critics within the evangelical community, more accustomed to doing battle with department stores and public schools over keeping religion in Christmas, are stunned by the shutdown. It's almost unheard of for a Christian church to cancel services on a Sunday, and opponents of the closures are accusing these congregations of bowing to secular culture. But I mean, come on. Christmas, it's a holiday. You don't expect the pastors to work on a holiday, do you?
Apparently they do.
I mean, why would anybody open a church on Christmas? Everything else is closed. And this guy, David Wells, professor of history and systematic theology at Gordon Cornwell Theological Seminary, says, "This is a consumer mentality at work. Let's not impose church on people. Let's not make church in any way inconvenient." They always blame us. What? We didn't tell the churches to well, I mean, it's the secularism that they're after, I think. They always blame us for making things more secular.
We don't care. Go ahead, have your church open on Christmas. Knock yourselves out. We don't freaking care. We really don't.
It's not our fault that they closed the church.
Now, of course, we did have that one call once from the young lady who was upset that we had our show on. We used to be on Sunday mornings. She was upset that we had our show on Sunday morning because she had to stay home from church in order to watch us. But that's the limit of our responsibility.
Well, she had no free will, so.
What? That's it?
That's what you got? I'm not going to read the whole thing.
I have more comments on this war on Christmas nonsense.
Okay.
Okay, obviously there was no war on Christmas. Anybody with the slightest bit of grasp of reality understands there are multiple groups who, for various reasons, partly purely practical commercialism reasons, that this is a season when everybody's gearing up for holidays. So every group, even the non-Christians, decided, what the heck, let's take advantage of the fact that our whole culture is geared for there to be a big holiday at this time of year, so we'll do it too.
Jesus says, buy this stuff.
And now they all have their other different holidays on that day, and stores, understandably, not wanting to turn away the 20% or more of our society that isn't Christian by being pure, by saying purely Merry Christmas on their stores, have adopted a more neutral, all-encompassing Happy Holidays, because there are more than one holiday happening during this period of time.
Even if you're a Christian.
That is not an attack on Christianity. It is a nod of respect to the fact that everybody, even us atheists, remember we talked about this before, even us atheists celebrate some sort of holiday thing during this time period, even though we don't call it Christmas or think that it has anything to do with Jesus. We do it too. It's convenient. Everybody's doing it. Stores just want to be all-encompassing. That's all it is. You know what there is, though? There is a war on Kwanzaa. You can go to Pat Robertson's website where he's got this giant tirade about how he is upset with Kwanzaa because it was made up in the 60s and blah-de-blah-de-blah, and he doesn't like that. There's a war on Hanukkah, which is the Jewish holiday celebrated during that time of year, automatically, because Christians want everybody only saying Merry Christmas. They don't want anybody saying Happy Hanukkah either.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's go back for a second to this fake story about changing the words to Silent Night so that it wouldn't be about Christmas.
Yeah.
Of course, that was totally ridiculous because it was changed because it's part of a play that's been played in churches for years.
A play which is not a secular exercise. It happens to also have religious Christmas songs in it.
But even if it hadn't been...
We ought to be getting on their case about that.
But even if it hadn't been, even if it had purely been the school's decision, we're changing the lyrics. Who cares? I mean, if the school wants to present that as part of their Christmas pageant, then that's their policy. It's not part of an overall war on Christmas.
Well, but
there's no legal challenge to. There's no legal reason that's forcing them to change the lyrics because kids are singing Silent Night at schools all over the country.
Well, I'm not sure that. I don't think that that the war on Christmas proponents. Boy, that's not what I mean. The people claiming there's a war on Christmas, their argument is not entirely laws have been changed so that you always have to not say Christmas and Jesus and stuff. I mean, they do complain about that, but they also are claiming that there's a big cultural movement to de-emphasize the Christian part of this holiday season. Right. And you know what? On that count, I think they're right. I think there is a cultural movement to to de-emphasize the Christianity part of this holiday season. But it's not because it's a war. It's not to hurt Christians. It's not to hurt Christianity. It's to be all-inclusive because there is a significant 20% or more segment of the United States public that isn't Christian but has their own holidays during the same time. It is not a big deal. But as long as they whoop it up, they can get people to send them money to fight it. And that's what this is all about.
But you know what else de-emphasizes the role of religion in Christmas?
Santa Claus? What?
Stores.
Oh, stores.
Using Christmas
By the way,
to sell their stuff. I mean, you know, what could be more antithetical to the Christian religion in principle than a store saying, Merry Christmas, buy lots of crap from us.
You ever heard the claim that Santa Claus is an anti-Christian thing?
Yeah.
You've heard that, right?
Yeah, I
You know what the true story is on that?
He's a saint.
Yeah. Saint Nicholas was an actual Catholic saint, or if he's not an official saint, he's one of those guys they call a saint anyway in the Catholic Church. Don't ask me, I can't explain it. But when the Protestants took over France, I think, if I've got my facts straight, I encourage people to research this and get a more detailed and more accurate version somewhere else. But as I understand it, the Protestants in France took over the country and did not, they wanted to exclude the Catholic Church from official activities or from having so much power or something. So the Protestants made it illegal to venerate saints. And so they turned St. Nicholas into a non-religious holiday icon so they could keep legally venerating him. That's where Santa Claus came from. It wasn't secularists!
It was the Protestants.
It was Protestants versus Catholics! We never did any of that! Oh, boy.
Okay. We've left these guys on the line long enough.
Okay.
Let's go to John.
Hello.
Hello, John.
Hi, I have some a response to the Noah thing that the guy was talking about.
Well, actually, Jeff brought it up.
That would be the guy. What's your comment?
Oh, I actually found evidence that Noah's Ark was made out of steel.
And did you find a chunk of this steel anywhere?
Yes. I actually saw a documentary on PBS a couple days.
Oh, really?
Do tell.
Well,
yeah.
You know, that would prove a lot because, you know, they hadn't invented steel yet. So if God could divinely help Noah, you know, have a bunch of ready access to steel, that would be pretty impressive magic trick.
I saw a documentary that said that Noah's Ark actually crash landed near Roswell, New Mexico.
Well, I'm actually related to Noah. He's actually one of my great uncles, and I have a photo album of me and him.
Thank you very much for your call, John.
Yes.
We shouldn't be, you know, more tolerant of people that are making crank calls that we like than we are of people that make crank calls we don't like.
Still.
He was joking.
It did take us a moment to catch on there.
Yes.
All right.
No, I caught on right away. It took you a moment to catch on.
And?
Okay, and Ted.
Ted?
Fucking hook nose dirty.
Wow. So, shall I do my news story? You kind of need
sure,
something.
if you want.
Amanda Blake is an 18-year-old girl who went to her doctor, actually got the blessings of her mother and father, non-religious blessings of her mother and father, to go and get birth control when she turned 18. She wasn't sexually active. She wasn't planning on getting married and using it for family planning or anything. She just wanted to be prepared. So she went to her local clinic, Southwestern Medical Clinic, and Dr. Delbert Hulskoter was her doctor, and Amanda's complaint is that during her appointment with the doctor, she was not examined, and the doctor never gave her a prescription for birth control pills. Instead, the doctor questioned her for 20 minutes about her moral beliefs, career options, and religion, and then charged her $68 for the visit. She was unaware of the Christian roots of the Southwestern Medical Clinic organization before she went there. And she's a Wiccan. This guy, when she went in to get legal medical assistance, right? Legal drugs, she was turned down and preached at and charged by this Christian doctor. And I just think that's horrific. I think we've covered stories before about guys at pharmacies refusing to hand out birth control, contraceptives, various things that they don't like. If you're going to be a doctor, be prepared to hand out the medical assistance that is legal. It is none of your freaking business to make moral decisions for other people. I'm sorry, I know that according to your religion, you are your brother's keeper, and it really is your business, but legally, it's not. Stop trying to make it your business.
Well, now, doctors seem like a fuzzier issue than pharmacists. Because when you're a pharmacist, it's not really you making the decision. It's just the doctor saying, I want you to fill this prescription, and you just have the training to do it.
Amanda Blake said, the doctor asked me if I was sexually active, and I said no. He asked me if I was planning on getting married, and I said no. He asked me why I needed the birth control pills, and I said I wanted to be prepared, that I'd rather not make a mistake and end up pregnant. I thought I was being responsible. Then he gave me a speech about how it was better to wait for marriage, none of his business, and with all the diseases out there, but I said, it's my choice. Amanda said the doctor asked her about her religious beliefs and whether she went to church. When she said she was Wiccan, the doctor looked shocked and horrified. He went on to ask her about her career plans, urged her to see a Christian counselor, and finally denied her request for a prescription for birth control pills. This is all stuff doctors ought not be doing. It is none of his freaking business what religion she is.
I was going to say, it's fuzzier when you've actually got doctors instead of pharmacists.
How's that
doing
fuzzier?
This stuff. Because, a doctor isn't legally required to make a certain prescription.
Well, it's interesting, because this doctor's getting sued, so...
okay. Well, I don't know. I mean,
it may be that he's being sued on the basis of... Well, wait a minute.
I mean, if somebody calls and requests some kind of specialized, not over-the-counter pain medication, and the doctor looks at them and says, "No, I don't really think you need that."
But he did not refuse to fill her prescription for valid medical reasons.
Refused to give her a prescription.
To give her a prescription for medical reasons. He refused to give her the prescription for religious reasons. I actually started crying, she said. The way he was saying it, he acted like I was doing something criminal. I felt humiliated and put on the spot. After about 20 minutes, he said he wasn't going to give me a prescription. He said he had taken an oath to do what he knows is right and not what he thinks or believes is right. What is that all about? Is he a guy who does not think or believe what he knows is right? I don't get that at all. It seems to me what you know is right is what you know is right. And if he was going to say, I didn't give him to you because I'm a Christian, it would be much clearer. Her father said he was proud of his daughter for taking responsibility and for planning ahead before taking the step to becoming sexually active. And they're gonna sue the hospital.
Okay.
This isn't the 1700s, she said. The Puritans aren't in control anymore. We as pagans still face modern-day persecution, and that's exactly what he did. Her father said he made her feel like she had done something wrong and tried to get her to go to a Christian counselor. I think that's grounds for a lawsuit. I do too. That is persecution. And I want to add on top of this, we're not Wiccans. We think that that pretty much all superstition-based religions are equally silly. I didn't read this story because I'm a Wiccan who cares specifically about Wiccan rights. I read this story because I know if she had said, I'm an atheist, instead of I'm a Wiccan, it would have turned out exactly the same way.
Right. Okay, back to the phones. We've got Chuck. Hello, Chuck.
Hello?
Hi, Chuck. Who is...
Hi, I'm not Chuck.
Oh, you're not
Is this
Chuck.
Phil?
I'm sorry.
What's your name,
Not
sir?
Chuck nor Phil.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, I must have slipped in under the wire.
Apparently. Do you want to take him or what?
Yeah, sure.
Go.
What's
Hey,
your topic?
I want to talk about Christmas just for a minute. You guys threw out a real interesting story there about the mega churches closing. This is something that I think is real important. I think the reason why they're closing has very little to do with family time and more to do with the fact that these things are in essence mini malls. For the church to be open, that means the coffee shop's got to be open, the bookstore's got to be open, the daycare center's got to be open.
I think you're right. They say in this story, it does go on to say, let's see. I'll try to find this. Oh gosh, now I've got dead air. I'm looking for the quote that will support what you said. Go on, sir.
Well, I think it's interesting that these mega churches have gotten to the point where they now operate like a very small city state. They have an infrastructure. They've got so many base number of employees that they've got to keep on the payroll. And Christmas work is typically double time, if not time and a half. So economically, there's not. I think it comes down to simple economics. There's not an economic reason in the world why they would want to come and have worship on the day of this, alleged birth, which is, poppycock anyways.
There's one thing they're lacking to be an actual city-state, and that's housing. But what's your bet?
Well, sure. That's just about the only thing, though. But
what do you want to bet, though, that eventually they come up with that idea of having people actually live in the church?
Well, they've had
themselves?
that. I mean, Jim and Tammy Baker had their real estate deals and their Christian communities that they were putting.
Sure. Yeah, there's always been almost a complex.
I couldn't find the quote I was looking for. Somewhere in that story about the mega churches, there's a quote from some church official saying, "Look, it's just not cost effective."
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's just boy, talk about not walking it like you talk it. That's just a little sad to me. This would be the one time you'd want to actually have that show of strength and get out there.
I find it awkward to talk about as an atheist because really I don't care what they do with their with their religion. It's up to them. I don't want that. Personally, I'm glad to see them putting practical concerns over this superstitious fear that if they don't toe the line on the holiday, that something bad will happen to them. I'm actually encouraged. Huh?
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way. I do want to bring up something that actually has nothing to do with religion, but has everything to do with the season. And I'll hang up so you guys can chat about it.
Okay.
How do you guys feel about Festivus?
Festivus. I forgot all about Festivus.
Isn't that the Christmas for people who hate Christmas?
I celebrated Festivus last year. What day is it again? Do you know?
Oh, hell, I don't know.
I'll look it up. I won the feat of strength at last Festivus.
Well, you look pretty wiry. I can see that.
Do we have to explain this?
I hope not.
Sure
I hope there's enough people out there who Seinfeld's a touchstone, culturally.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your call.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Festivus is a recently made-up religion, as opposed to these religions that were made up, decades or hundreds or thousands of years ago, that made up by characters on the Seinfeld show, though actually based on something that one of the writers' families actually did. And you can find out about it on the internet if you want to do the research.
Okay.
Let's move on.
About the megachurch thing. I mean, they are mega churches. I mean, they get tons of money pouring in. And I think it's funny that they would let cost effectiveness
Dude, they're only that big because they do care about cost effectiveness. Same thing goes for Walmart.
That's the whole focus.
Right.
The church is a business and nothing else.
On the one hand, it is fun to sort of like rib them about, you're not being all like totally committed to your religion like you claim to be. But on the other hand, I don't really want to be any more committed than they are. I'd rather that they found plenty of room in their lives for practical considerations. I think that's fine.
Yeah, but it touches on this thing that has been brought up on a message board I frequent a lot, which is this concept called meta-atheism. Which this guy brought up. Basically, his theory is nobody really believes in God, because if they did, if they did, then they wouldn't behave the way they do. Yeah. Like shutting down the church on a Sunday is a good example.
Okay.
And so it's interesting in that light.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't have time to go into the whole meta-atheism thing right now. And I don't even really believe it, but it's kind of funny to kick around.
Okay.
Anyway, I think we're down to nearly our last caller of the day, or possibly the last, and so I'd like to first throw in the announcements that, first of all, you can meet us for 50 minutes from now at Mongolian Barbecue, downtown, 117 San Jacinto. And also, if you fail to have your call connected on the air today, you can always email us afterwards at tv@atheist-community.org, and then, we'll have a big old discussion, which we might even read on the next show. And with that, let's switch to Delores.
Hello?
Delores?
Delores?
Hello. People are moving their phone a lot today.
How are you, boys? Hello?
Hi?
Is this the Home Shopping Network?
Yes. Oh, boy. Phew. So, that's great. So, we've done a fine show here on the war on Festivus.
Yes, we have.
Oh, boy. It only comes once a year, you know.
Right. What else? Okay.
I don't know. I did my story.
I did all my
Can we have the phone number back?
No, we've got one more caller, but we don't have a name yet, and we're tapped out on news for today. So, we could go back to Narnia.
I'll show this because I printed this out from the news story. Okay. Remember the story I did on the girl who went to her doctor, and the doctor said, "You're evil. You got to become a Christian in order to be a good person, and I ain't giving you birth control." There she is. They're zooming in. There she is. Ooh, so evil looking. Aren't those just terrible people?
The lady on the left.
Okay, she looks a little happy, but but there you go. That's the kinds of normal, everyday folks who just don't happen to be part of Christianity that get mistreated when doctors take it into their hands to make moral decisions for others. There. Real human beings, not some abstract fairy tale cartoon of a person that just automatically evil and wants to eat babies just because they're not one of your religious people.
Yes,
regular old folks, just like us. We're regular old folks. We're not weird.
We lost Phil earlier, so we're going to get him back. This should be the last call. Phil?
Yes.
Hi, Phil.
Yes, I recall a couple of months ago when Jeff D. was on the program, and we were winding right down to the end just like today, but he described himself as a transhumanist.
Yeah?
And with the time remaining, could you please describe what that means you, anyway?
To me, well, I mean, I didn't make up the term. I'm willing to accept what it means to the people that did make it up.
Why don't you explain this?
I will explain off the air.
Okay, thanks for calling, Phil.
Okay, I'm a transhumanist. You've probably heard of humanists, and if you heard about them through your right-wing fundamentalist Christian church, then you probably heard lies. Humanism is just a philosophical viewpoint that says when we are deciding important things about morality and ethics and human destiny and major big philosophical things, we ought to decide those things from the perspective of humanity, right? Instead of from the perspective of, some invisible man in the sky. Transhumanists say, that's not quite good enough because we have this thing called technology and we've already started using technology to improve ourselves. And what we really ought to be doing is thinking about ethics and morality and the future and the destiny of mankind and all those big philosophical issues from the perspective of what do we want to become using technology? How would we like to improve ourselves? How would we like to maybe diversify further? Well, okay, so that's basically it. But
website?
You don't. plug the word transhumanism into any search engine, and you will find plenty of material on the internet that you can read to your heart's content.
Okay, that's our show, and we'll be back at the same time next week, 4:30 on Sundays. Thank you to everyone. Thanks to the crew. We'll see you at 6:45 at Mongolian Barbecue.
Yeah, thanks, crew. You rock, guys.
Yes.
Thanks to all our callers. Bye-bye.